The morning sun streamed through the large windows of the Galactic Council Embassy in Geneva. Dr. Catherine Alvarez rubbed her tired eyes as she reviewed the data on her screen one more time. For 12 years, she had served as the lead xenobiologist at the Earth Embassy, studying how humans compared to other species in the galaxy. Earth had been classified as a Class 5 Deathworld since first contact 80 years ago. It meant that the planet was considered dangerous, but not extreme. Humans were seen as tough but unremarkable in the grand scheme of galactic life forms. Dr. Alvarez took a sip of her coffee, a drink that most alien visitors couldn't even touch due to its caffeine content. She was preparing her yearly report when her screen flashed with an urgent message from Galactic Council headquarters. "Priority Alpha communication for Dr. Catherine Alvarez," announced the computer. She straightened in her chair. "Accept transmission." The holographic image of Senior Science Director Zexitral appeared, his 6 eyes blinking nervously. The tall, blue-skinned alien looked unusually tense. "Dr. Alvarez, I apologize for the unexpected communication," he said. "The Central Science Division has completed a comprehensive analysis of human physiological and psychological data collected over the past 8 decades. Catherine nodded. This was routine. Every species was continuously evaluated. "The results are troubling," continued Zextral. "Our analysis shows that humans have been severely misclassified. Your species demonstrates survival traits, adaptability, and resilience far beyond your current rating." "What do you mean?" she asked, setting down her coffee. "Earth is being reclassified as a Class 14 Deathworld, effective immediately. This is unprecedented. The classification system only went up to Class 12 theoretically, with Class 13 being a purely mathematical concept. We've had to create an entirely new category." Catherine's jaw dropped. "That's impossible. There must be a mistake." "No mistake. The data is clear. Humans can survive conditions that would kill 99% of known sentient species. Your psychological resilience is off our charts. Your species treats activities that would be considered extreme survival situations as recreational sports." Zextral's voice lowered. "The Council is in emergency session as we speak. I wanted to warn you personally before the announcement. This will have serious repercussions." After the transmission ended, Catherine sat in stunned silence. Then she grabbed her phone and called her brother at the Pentagon. Lieutenant Jack Howard was halfway through his morning run when his phone buzzed. Seeing his sister's name, he stopped and answered. "Kathy? What's up?" "Jack, something big is happening. You need to get to work now." Before he could ask for details, his own phone beeped with an emergency alert from command. All military personnel were being called in. 30 minutes later, Jack sat in a crowded briefing room at the Pentagon. The Secretary of Defense stood at the podium, face grim. "Ladies and gentlemen, at 0700 hours this morning, Earth was reclassified by the Galactic Council as a Class 14 Deathworld. This is the highest classification ever given to an inhabited planet." Murmurs spread through the room. "For those unfamiliar with the implications," the Secretary continued, "this means we are now considered the most dangerous known species from the most extreme survival environment. Council protocols mandate special handling procedures for Class 10 and above civilizations. There is no protocol for Class 14 because it wasn't thought possible." Jack raised his hand. "Sir, why now? We've been part of the galactic community for 80 years. Apparently, they've been collecting data on us all this time. What we consider normal, they see as extraordinary. Our ability to adapt to different environments, our psychological resilience, even our recreational activities, all suggest we evolved under far more pressure than previously thought." The Secretary pulled up a chart. "Lieutenant Howard, you've participated in combat simulations against various Council species. Your experience is now valuable. We need to understand how this new classification changes our standing." Jack nodded, suddenly understanding why he'd been called in. The simulations had always seemed too easy, but he'd assumed they were simplified for training purposes. On Nexus Prime, the central hub world of the Galactic Council, Senior diplomat Eli Martinez struggled to maintain his composure. As Earth's representative to the Security Committee, he found himself facing a room of increasingly hostile aliens. Ambassador Martinez, hissed Council member Vexitari, a tall, chitinous being from the Klaxon hierarchy. Did humans deliberately conceal their true capabilities during first contact assessments? Absolutely not, Eli replied firmly. We have always been transparent. Then explain how your species regularly engages in activities that would kill most sentient beings, simply for entertainment. Vexitari projected a series of images. Humans, climbing sheer cliff faces without safety equipment, diving to crushing ocean depths, eating foods that contained compounds toxic to most species, and enduring temperature extremes that would kill most council races. These are simply activities some humans enjoy, Eli explained. We didn't think they were particularly noteworthy. A Mindari representative stood up, her delicate crystalline form shimmering under the chamber lights. Your military training includes surviving in environments that would kill my kind within minutes. Your children play in conditions that would be considered emergency situations on my world. The chamber erupted into shouts and accusations. Eli tried to respond, but the noise was overwhelming. Finally, the ancient Eldari representative tapped his staff for silence. The room quieted immediately out of respect. I have lived long enough to see 17 species join the council, the Eldari said, his voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying throughout the chamber. Never have I witnessed such fear over a reclassification. This is beyond reclassification, Vexitari countered. The humans qualify as Class 14. Our scale wasn't designed to go that high. They are statistical outliers in every survival category. And this frightens you, observed the Eldari. It should frighten all of us. Vexitari turned to address the entire committee. I propose immediate quarantine measures for the Sol system, until we can properly assess the threat level. Eli stepped forward. My people are not a threat. We've been peaceful members of the galactic community for decades. Perhaps, said Vexitari, or perhaps you've been waiting, watching, learning our weaknesses. As the debate raged on, Eli noticed his communicator blinking with urgent messages from Earth. Trade agreements were being canceled. Human ships in space were being ordered to return home immediately. The reclassification was already having serious effects across the galaxy. He needed to find allies quickly, or humanity might find itself isolated and surrounded by a galaxy suddenly afraid of them. The irony wasn't lost on him. After decades of humans being in awe of alien civilizations, now those same civilizations were trembling at the thought of humanity's potential. Eli caught the eye of the Eldari representative, who gave him a subtle nod. Perhaps not everyone in the council saw humans as a threat. There might still be hope for diplomacy. But as Vexitari called for a vote on quarantine measures, Eli knew that everything had changed. Earth's place in the galaxy would never be the same again. Captain Nicole Bennett stood on the bridge of the research vessel Solar Horizon, her face grim as she stared at the view screen. 6 Mindari warships surrounded her small science vessel, their weapons locked and ready. This is Commander Zil Nara, of the Mindari Defense Force, came the transmission. Your vessel is ordered to power down immediately and prepare for boarding. All humans are now classified as high-risk entities. Nicole exchanged glances with her science officer, Dr. Peter Collins. Just yesterday, they had been welcome guests in this sector, conducting joint research with the Mindari Science Academy. Commander Zilnara, Nicole replied calmly, we are an unarmed research vessel on a mission approved by your government. We request clarification on this sudden change. Earth has been reclassified as a Class 14 Deathworld, the alien commander stated. All human vessels are to return to Sol system immediately under escort. Power down now, or we will take action. Nicole muted the transmission and turned to her crew of 12. Options? She asked. We can't outrun them, said Linda Rodriguez, the helmsman. And we have no weapons. Dr. Collins looked up from his console. Captain, I've been studying Mindari ship designs for years. Their sensor arrays have a blind spot directly beneath their central command module. If we could get under one of those ships, we'd still have 5 more to deal with, Nicole pointed out. Not if we use the atmospheric samples we collected from the gas giant, Peter suggested. They contain high concentrations of ionized particles. If we vent them near their ships, Nicole smiled slowly. It would create a sensor shadow like a smokescreen. 20 minutes later, the Mindari commander was shouting in confusion as his sensors showed the human vessel seemingly breaking apart into multiple signatures, scattering in different directions. By the time they realized it was just a sensor trick caused by the vented atmospheric gases, the solar horizon had slipped past their perimeter at full speed. Plot a course that keeps us near stellar bodies with high radiation, Nicole ordered. They'll have trouble tracking us through the interference. As they escaped, Nicole recorded a message to be sent through secure channels back to Earth. The galaxy had suddenly become a much more dangerous place for humans, not because of alien threats, but because of alien fear. In Washington, D.C., Russell walked onto the stage at the United Nations emergency session. As head of the Human Diplomatic Corps, he had the difficult job of explaining to world leaders what the reclassification meant. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, looking out at the concerned faces. As you've all heard by now, the Galactic Council has reclassified Earth as a Class 14 Deathworld. This is unprecedented. Until yesterday, the highest known classification was Class 11. He tapped his tablet, bringing up a holographic display of the classification system. In simple terms, the Council believes we are the most dangerous sapient species currently known to exist, evolved on the most extreme survival planet in charted space. The room filled with murmurs. The president of Brazil raised her hand. Mr. Russell, is this an insult or a compliment? Alan gave a wry smile. Neither. It's a statement of scientific assessment, but with major political implications. The Council's protocol requires special handling for species from worlds rated Class 10 or above. There is no protocol for Class 14, because they never imagined such a world could produce sapient life. What does this mean for our trade agreements? Asked the European Union representative. Most have been suspended, Alan admitted. Many species are refusing to allow humans on their planets. Our ships in space have been ordered to return home immediately. Are we facing military action? The Chinese delegate's question made the room go silent. Some factions in the Council are pushing for containment measures, Alan said carefully. They want to quarantine Earth until they decide how to deal with us. Others are advocating for a more cautious approach. He displayed images of Council species alongside humans. What we consider normal, they see as extraordinary. Our ability to survive radiation, temperature extremes, pressure changes, and toxic environments exceeds any other known species. Even our psychology frightens them. Our adaptability, our drive to explore, our tendency to treat dangerous activities as recreation. The Russian delegate leaned forward. So they fear us because we are tough? They fear us because we are an unknown quantity, Alan corrected. Imagine discovering that ants could suddenly lift tanks and survive nuclear radiation. Would you be concerned? On social media across Earth, the news spread rapidly. Hashtags like Chakir Class 14 Problems and Chakir Deathworld Proud trended globally. Some people treated the reclassification as a badge of honor, posting videos of themselves doing ordinary human activities that were apparently terrifying to aliens, eating spicy food, diving into cold water, climbing trees. Paul Rivera, a biology professor at UCLA, posted a video explaining Deathworld classifications that went viral within hours. A Class 5 world, which is what we were classified as before, means a planet with significant environmental challenges, he explained to the camera. High gravity, temperature fluctuations, moderate radiation, diverse biosphere with some dangerous predators. But a Class 14? That's off the charts. It means the Council believes nearly everything about Earth is lethal by galactic standards. Paul's video cut to him drinking hot coffee. This beverage contains enough caffeine to be considered a dangerous stimulant on most Council worlds. Our ability to not only tolerate it but enjoy it is apparently alarming. The video showed him taking a walk in light rain, Water falling from the sky is considered an extreme weather event on many worlds. The fact that we just carry on with our day is seen as remarkable resilience. While many found humor in the situation, governments worldwide moved to a heightened state of alert. Military forces were mobilized not for aggression but preparation. If parts of the Galactic Council decided humans were too dangerous to be allowed free movement in space, Earth needed to be ready. On Nexus Prime, Sandra Miller arrived with a small security detail of 4 Marines. As Earth's newly appointed emergency ambassador, her mission was to prevent any drastic action against humanity. The moment she stepped off the transport ship, she noticed the wide berth given to her team by the various alien species in the spaceport. Some even turned and walked in the opposite direction. "Is it just me, or are we being avoided?" asked Joe Lewis, one of the Marines. "We're the bogeyman now," Sandra replied quietly. "The scary Deathworlders who can survive things they can't even imagine." A tall, slender alien with iridescent skin approached them, moving gracefully. Sandra recognized the species, an Eldari, one of the oldest and most respected races in the Council. "Ambassador Miller," the Eldari said, bowing slightly, "I am Mentor Valinar. The Eldari Conclave has requested that I serve as your guide during these complicated times." Sandra returned the bow. "We appreciate any help, Mentor Valinar." "Not all species share the fear that currently grips the Council," Valinar said as they walked toward the diplomatic quarter. "Some of us have studied enough history to know that aggressive action against Deathworlders typically ends poorly for the aggressors." As they passed a group of Klaxon diplomats, Sandra noticed their chitinous bodies stiffen, their compound eyes following her group with obvious suspicion. "High Executor Vextari has called for military containment of the Sol system," Valinar informed her quietly. "Others advocate for deeper study before any action. The Council chamber has never seen such chaos." "And what do the Eldari believe?" Sandra asked. Valinar's ancient eyes studied her. "We believe that any species that evolved on a world as challenging as yours must have qualities worth understanding rather than fearing. Adaptation is the cornerstone of survival. Perhaps humans have much to teach the galaxy if given the chance." Sandra nodded gratefully. They would need allies in the days ahead. The real question was whether reason would prevail over fear in the Council chambers. As they approached the massive central building where the fate of humanity would be debated, Sandra straightened her shoulders. Her species had survived, and thrived on a Class 14 death world. Surely they could survive this political crisis too. The main chamber of the Galactic Council on Nexus Prime had never seen such disorder. Representatives from over 200 species filled the massive circular room, their voices rising in a cacophony of languages, hisses, clicks, and electronic tones. In the center of it all stood Ambassador Sandra Miller, her 4 Marine guards forming a protective square around her. The simple presence of humans in the chamber had caused 3 species to leave in protest, and 2 others to retreat to observation booths with enhanced air filtration. "Order!" bellowed the council speaker, a massive being with purple-gray skin that appeared to be made of stone. His voice echoed through the chamber, temporarily silencing the chaos. "This emergency session will proceed with dignity or not at all." High Executor Vextari stepped forward, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the lights. As leader of the Klaxon hierarchy, he represented one of the most militaristic factions in the Council. "Fellow representatives," he began, his translator, conveying his clicks and hisses into Standard Galactic. "The reclassification of Earth as a Class 14 death world is not merely a scientific curiosity. It represents a clear and present danger to galactic stability." Sandra clenched her jaw but remained silent. Her mentor in diplomatic service had taught her that sometimes listening was more powerful than speaking. Vexitari displayed a holographic image of Earth, highlighting its various extreme features. "This planet has radiation levels that would kill many of us, temperature variations that span from freezing to boiling, gravity that would crush several member species, atmospheric pressure that would collapse the lungs of others." The image shifted to show humans engaged in various activities, Firefighters running into burning buildings, deep-sea divers, mountain climbers, and soldiers training in desert conditions. And these, Vextari continued, are the beings that evolved on this killer world. Humans routinely survive conditions that would be fatal to 90% of council species. They consume substances for pleasure that would be lethal toxins to many of us. Their psychological profiles show a capacity for both extreme violence and extreme cooperation that defies our understanding. The Mindari representative rose next. The Mindari Collective agrees with the Klaxon assessment. We propose immediate containment protocols. All human ships must return to their home system. A defense perimeter should be established. Contact should be limited to essential diplomatic channels only. The chamber erupted again, some species calling for even stricter measures, others objecting to any action without further study. From her quiet observation, Sandra noticed something interesting. The older species, those that had been part of galactic civilization the longest, seemed the least concerned. It was the younger, less established species that displayed the most fear. Mentor Valinar of the Eldari finally rose to speak. The ancient being moved slowly, but the chamber fell silent out of respect. I have witnessed 17 species join the council during my lifetime, he said, his voice soft yet carrying throughout the chamber. Each brought unique perspectives and abilities. Each faced suspicion at first. He turned to look directly at Vextari. The Klaxon themselves were once feared for their hive mind capabilities and warrior culture. Now they are valued members of our community. Vextari's mandibles clicked in what Sandra guessed was annoyance. Humans have been part of our extended community for 80 years, Valinar continued. In that time, they have adhered to all treaties, engaged in fair trade, and contributed valuable scientific knowledge. Their reclassification changes our understanding of them, but not their demonstrated behavior. A small, furry being that Sandra didn't recognize stood up next. The Eldari speak from the luxury of being nearly immortal and physically resilient. It squeaked. My people would be crushed simply by a human stepping on us accidentally. How can we not fear them? Sandra decided it was time to speak. With permission, she said, stepping forward. The council speaker nodded. The human representative may address the council. Respected members of the Galactic Council, Sandra began, keeping her voice calm and level. Earth has been home to humans for hundreds of thousands of years. We evolved there, yes, under conditions that seem harsh by the standards of many worlds. But those conditions shaped us into who we are, not just physically resilient, but adaptable, innovative, and cooperative. She gestured to her guards. These 4 Marines can indeed survive conditions that would be lethal to many species here. But they use that ability to protect others, not to threaten them. Throughout human history, the same strength that lets us survive harsh conditions has been used to rescue others from those same dangers. Sandra displayed her own hologram, humans rescuing others from fires, floods, and other disasters. We did not choose to evolve on a Class 14 world, but we choose what to do with the capabilities it gave us. As she spoke, Sandra noticed a small reptilian being enter the chamber and approach Counselor Zix of the Mercantile Concordat. After a brief whispered exchange, Zix looked at Sandra with newfound interest. While the council debated, Frank Cooper made his way through the labyrinthine corridors of the Galactic Defense Force headquarters. As a human military analyst embedded with the GDF through an exchange program, he had been largely ignored by his alien colleagues, until today. Now he found himself deliberately avoided, with conversations stopping when he entered rooms and data terminals locking when he approached. Frank had served in the Marines for 12 years before joining the diplomatic corps. His combat experience and strategic mind had made him valuable to the GDF, who wanted to understand human military thinking. Now that same background made him a potential threat. Turning a corner, he nearly bumped into General Krav, his direct superior. Analyst Cooper, Krav said, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly in what Frank had learned was a sign of nervousness in his species. I was looking for you. Sir? Frank maintained a neutral expression. Given the current situation, your access to certain areas of the facility has been temporarily restricted. Frank nodded. I understand, sir. Security protocols. Yes, exactly. Krav seemed relieved by Frank's easy acceptance. You'll be limited to the diplomatic wing until further notice. Of course, sir. Is there anything I should be working on in the meantime? Just routine analysis. Nothing urgent. Krav hurried away, clearly uncomfortable. Frank returned to his small office in the diplomatic wing, thinking carefully. The abrupt restrictions, the nervous behavior of his colleagues. Something was happening that they didn't want him to see. He activated his personal tablet, careful to use only the public network that he knew was monitored. A few routine searches about the council meeting, nothing suspicious. Then he spotted a junior analyst, Trill, walking past his office. The young felon had always been friendly to Frank, fascinated by human culture. Trill, Frank called casually. Got a minute? The blue-skinned analyst glanced around nervously before entering. Hello, Frank. It's, quite a day, isn't it? Sure is. Listen, I need to finish my report on comparative tactical approaches, but my access to the historical simulation database has been cut off. Any chance you could pull those files for me? Trill hesitated. I don't know if I should. Just the historical stuff, Frank assured him. Nothing classified. My report is due tomorrow, and I'd hate to miss the deadline over a temporary security glitch. Well, Trill's cultural fascination with humans won out over caution. I suppose the historical simulations are public record anyway. 20 minutes later, Frank stared at his screen in growing horror. Hidden among the historical files were new simulation scenarios, all created within the last 24 hours. They had titles like Sol Containment Strategy and Earth Pacification Options. The Galactic Defense Force wasn't just worried about humans, they were actively planning for military action against Earth. Frank needed to warn Earth immediately, but any direct communication would be monitored. He would need to be creative, a skill humans from a Class 14 Deathworld had in abundance. The Global Defense Council chamber in Geneva was tense as Admiral Lisa West presented her findings. 50 of Earth's top military and political leaders sat around the massive oak table, their faces grim. Satellite networks have detected increased alien fleet movements near our solar system's outer boundaries, Admiral West said, pointing to the holographic display. At least 3 species have moved warships closer to our territory in the past 24 hours. President Clark leaned forward. Are they preparing for an attack? Unknown, sir, but we've also received this. She nodded to her aide, who distributed tablets to everyone present. This intelligence came through unofficial channels from our embed in the Galactic Defense Force. The room fell silent as they read Frank Cooper's warning about the military simulations he had discovered. Sol Containment Strategy, read the Secretary of Defense. Earth Pacification Options, they're planning for war. Possibly, Admiral West cautioned, but these are simulations, not approved operations. Standard military practice is to plan for all scenarios, even unlikely ones. Dr. Gregory Maxwell, the leading expert on xenopsychology, raised his hand. If I may, Admiral, I believe we're looking at this all wrong. All eyes turned to the soft-spoken scientist. The galactic community isn't preparing for war, Dr. Maxwell explained. They're preparing for what they perceive as a potential threat. They've suddenly discovered that the quiet neighbors down the street are actually apex predators. But we're not predators, objected the Chinese representative. By their standards, we are, Dr. Maxwell insisted. Think about it. We can survive radiation levels that would kill most council species. We routinely handle temperatures, pressures, and chemical compounds that would be lethal to them. Our very biology seems designed for survival under extreme conditions. So what do you suggest, Doctor? Asked President Clark. A demonstration. Dr. Maxwell smiled. But not of our military might. Let's show them why we earned the Class 14 rating, but in a way that builds respect rather than fear. He tapped on his tablet, and the holographic display changed to show various crisis spots across council space, planets experiencing natural disasters, medical emergencies, and engineering challenges. I propose Operation Deathworld Diplomat, teams of human specialists sent to help with situations throughout Council space where our unique adaptability and resilience can be genuinely useful. The Secretary of State nodded slowly. Use our Deathworld advantages to help rather than threaten. Show them that having humans around is beneficial. Exactly, said Dr. Maxwell. The best way to change how they see us is to show them what we can do when we're on their side. President Clark looked around the table. We'll need volunteers, people who represent the best of what humanity can do. Already working on it, sir, said Admiral West. And while we pursue this diplomatic approach, I suggest we also prepare our defenses, just in case. The president nodded grimly. Agreed. Let's hope Dr. Maxwell's plan works. Because if it doesn't, Earth needs to be ready. Major Dwayne Harris had never expected to be leading a mission like this. He and his team of 5 Special Forces operators had been deployed to Klaxon Prime, not for combat, but for information. Their shuttle had landed under diplomatic cover. Officially, they were part of Ambassador Miller's extended security detail, taking a brief tour of the Klaxon homeworld. In reality, they had separated from the main group and were now making their way toward a military installation on the planet's northern continent. Remind me why we're not shooting our way in, whispered Sergeant Kelly Williams, as they observed the facility from a ridge 2 kilometers away. Because we're not at war, Harris replied calmly. And we don't want to be. We're here to gather intelligence, not start a fight. The Klaxon facility was heavily guarded, but Harris's team had an advantage. They could operate in environmental conditions that the Klaxon found challenging. The facility's perimeter sensors were calibrated for Klaxon biology, not human. The thermal gradient on the north side is steep enough that their guards avoid it, noted Lieutenant Steve Peterson, studying his scanner. Their exoskeletons make them vulnerable to rapid temperature changes. Harris nodded. That's our way in. Move. Out. The team made their way through terrain that would have been mildly uncomfortable for humans, but nearly intolerable for Klaxon. They crossed a geothermal field where the ground temperature fluctuated between freezing and boiling within meters. No wonder they classified us as extreme, muttered Williams. We're crossing terrain they'd need environmental suits for, and we're just sweating a bit. Inside the facility, the team moved carefully, using specialized equipment to hack into the Klaxon network. They weren't there to damage anything or steal physical objects, just information. They needed to know exactly what the most aggressive council species was planning. Lieutenant Peterson connected a device to a data terminal and began downloading files. Got something, he whispered. Military deployment orders. Their positioning, fleets at strategic points around our solar system. Full invasion? Harris asked, keeping watch. No. Containment. They're creating a blockade network, not attacking Earth directly, but isolating us. Peterson continued scanning. There's more. They've been analyzing human biology, looking for weaknesses. Harris thought about the implications. So they're preparing for war but not initiating it. They want to cage us first, study us, and then decide. Major, called Corporal Susan Lee from her position by the door. Patrol approaching. Download complete, Peterson confirmed. Let's move, ordered Harris. Back the way we came, and remember, no casualties unless absolutely necessary. The team retreated through the thermal field, carrying vital intelligence that Earth would need in the coming days. As they made their way back to their extraction point, Harris couldn't help but reflect on the irony of their mission. The Klaxon feared humans as dangerous predators, yet his team had just infiltrated one of their most secure facilities without firing a shot or harming anyone. Sometimes the most dangerous predator was the one smart enough not to bare its teeth. Back on Earth, universities across the planet opened their doors to council scientists who wanted to study humans. What had begun as a gesture of transparency had evolved into something unexpected, a cultural exchange. At Stanford University, Dr. Olivia Patterson led a group of alien visitors through the campus recreational facilities. And this is what we call a swimming pool, she explained to the group of fascinated scientists. Many humans swim for exercise or relaxation. A Phelan scientist, whose species evolved on a low-gravity world with minimal surface water, stared in amazement. You willingly submerge yourselves in dihydrogen monoxide? The pressure alone would be uncomfortable for many species. Would you like to see? Olivia asked with a smile. She led them to the viewing area where the university's swim team was practicing. The aliens watched in astonishment as humans dove into the water, swam rapidly across the pool, and even held their breath underwater. Remarkable respiratory control, noted a Mindari observer. And they appear to be enjoying this activity? Very much so, Olivia confirmed. Many humans find water soothing. Some of our earliest civilizations developed near oceans and rivers. In the university's kitchen, Chef Dan Bradley was demonstrating human cooking techniques to another group of visitors. He chopped raw vegetables with a steel knife, causing several aliens to flinch at how easily the blade cut through the plant matter. And now we apply heat, Dan explained, tossing the vegetables into a sizzling pan. The sound and sudden change in temperature made two of the visitors back away nervously. You prepare nutrients using open combustion? Asked a crystalline being, whose translator conveyed clear alarm. It's controlled, Dan assured them. Cooking with heat is one of humanity's oldest technologies. It helped us digest certain foods better and kill harmful bacteria. Across campus, students had organized extreme sports demonstrations. Mountain bikers performed jumps, skateboarders showed off tricks, and a rock climbing wall attracted a crowd of stunned alien observers. The human female is suspending her entire body weight by her finger digits, whispered one alien to another. And smiling while doing so, the other replied in awe. Similar scenes played out at universities and cultural centers worldwide. What had begun as scientific observation was becoming something else, a growing appreciation for the species that called a Class 14 Deathworld home. Meanwhile, in the Oval Office, President Clark reviewed the latest updates from Ambassador Miller. The tide might be turning in the Council, but slowly. Earth needed more time and more friends among the stars. 6 months had passed since Earth's reclassification as a Class 14 Deathworld. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. On the jungle planet Terex 4, Dr. Olivia Patterson wiped sweat from her forehead as she administered medication to another Xindi child. The colony had been struck by a devastating plague that affected their respiratory systems. 3 council medical teams had attempted to help, but retreated when the jungle's high humidity and toxic spores made them ill. Masti, Olivia said with a smile, gently injecting the medicine. The child's mother clicked her mandibles in what Olivia had learned was a sign of gratitude. Nearby, engineer Ben Harris adjusted the air filtration system he had built from salvaged parts. The system removed the toxic spores from the colony's central living areas, allowing the children to recover without exposure to the contaminants. Ready to head home tomorrow? Ben asked, joining Olivia as she packed her medical supplies. Almost, she replied. The colony leader wants to hold some kind of ceremony tonight. Probably just a formal thank you. That evening, as the planet's 3 moons rose in the purple sky, the humans were surprised when the Xindi elders presented them with ornate metal weapons. These are the blades of Zex Torah, explained the colony leader. In our culture, they are given only to those who have faced death for the sake of others. You are the first non-Xindi to receive this honor. Olivia accepted the ceremonial blade with appropriate reverence. We are deeply honored. Humans help others not because we are fearless, but because we believe everyone deserves to live without suffering. Perhaps, said the elder Xindi. That is the true strength of a Deathworld species. Not that you can survive what kills others, but that you choose to use that ability to help rather than dominate. As their ship lifted off the next morning, heading back to Earth, Olivia looked at the blade mounted on the wall of their cabin. Similar scenes had played out across Council space in recent months. Human disaster relief teams, engineers, doctors, and specialists had been deployed to crisis situations throughout the galaxy, places where human adaptability and resilience could make a difference. Operation Deathworld. Diplomat had worked better than anyone had expected. In the Grand Council chamber on Nexus Prime, Ambassador Sandra Miller stood at the central podium. The room, once filled with shouting and chaos during her first appearance, was now attentive and orderly. "Respected representatives of the Galactic Council," Sandra began. "6 months ago, I stood before you as the ambassador of a newly reclassified species. Many feared what Earth's designation as a Class 14 Deathworld might mean for the galaxy." She gestured to the holographic display showing human teams working on various worlds. Controlling reactor meltdowns too radioactive for other species. Diving into toxic oceans to repair underwater habitats. Entering burning buildings to rescue trapped aliens. In that time, human specialists have participated in 47 emergency response missions throughout Council space. We have shared medical knowledge that helps other species better survive harsh conditions. Our engineers have designed environmental protection systems now used on 12 worlds. Sandra paused, making eye contact with various representatives. "We did not choose to evolve on a Class 14 world, but we did choose what to do with the capabilities it gave us. And we choose to help." High Executor Vexitari rose from his seat. The Klaxon leader had been the most vocal advocate for containing humanity. The chamber grew tense as he approached the speaking platform. "The Klaxon hierarchy acknowledges the assistance humans have provided," he began, his translator conveying his clicking speech. Sandra noticed his tone seemed less hostile than before. "While we maintain caution regarding the potential dangers of Deathworld species, evidence suggests humans use their evolutionary advantages differently than anticipated." Vexitari's compound eyes fixed on Sandra. "Therefore, I propose a revision to our classification system." A murmur of surprise spread through the chamber. "Earth remains a Class 14 Deathworld by objective measures," Vexitari continued. "However, I propose a new subcategory system that recognizes potential benefit alongside potential threat. Under this system, humans would be designated as a Class 14B species, indicating both exceptional survival capabilities and demonstrable cooperative tendencies." Sandra tried to maintain her diplomatic composure, but couldn't hide her surprise. This was coming from the species that had initially pushed for Earth's quarantine. The council speaker called for a vote. One by one, representatives indicated their positions. When the final tally appeared, the measure had passed with an overwhelming majority. As the session adjourned, Mentor Valinar approached Sandra. The ancient Eldari's eyes twinkled with something like amusement. "Well played, Ambassador," he said, quietly. "Your species has accomplished in 6 months what many take decades to achieve, turning fear into respect." "It wasn't a strategy," Sandra replied honestly. "It's just who we are." "Perhaps that is why it worked," Valinar observed. "Authenticity is difficult to dismiss even for the most suspicious minds." Captain Ryan Phillips stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Horizon, watching as his ship approached an uncharted planet. What made this mission unique wasn't the destination, but the crew. For the first time, a joint Human Council expedition was heading to a world previously deemed too dangerous to explore. Ryan looked around the bridge at the mixed crew. Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez at navigation, working alongside Catal, a Mindari sensor specialist. Dr. Laura Jenkins, the ship's chief scientist, reviewing data with 3 different alien researchers. "Entering orbit, Captain," reported Lieutenant Rodriguez. "Atmospheric composition analysis complete," added Catal. "Temperature range from -20 to +50 degrees Celsius at the equator. Radiation levels at 3 times Council safety standards. Gravity at 1.2 Earth normal." "In other words," Ryan said with a smile, "a typical Tuesday for the human members of the crew." Catal's translator conveyed what might have been a laugh. "Indeed, Captain. What my people once viewed with alarm, I now find reassuring." Ryan nodded to Dr. Jenkins. "Prepare the landing team. Standard exploration protocols." As the landing shuttle prepared for descent, Ryan reflected on how quickly things had changed. Humans were still classified as coming from an extreme death world, still considered potentially dangerous by some species, but now they were also valued, their unique capabilities recognized as assets rather than threats. Back on Earth, Lieutenant Jack Howard stood in the reception area of the New York Galactic Embassy. A new alien ship had arrived in orbit that morning. AI vessel from a species that had only recently joined the Council. This is highly irregular, fretted the Galactic Liaison Officer. They haven't completed proper diplomatic channels. They simply arrived and requested permission to visit. What do they want? Jack asked. To see Earth, to experience, in their words, the legendary Class 14 Deathworld firsthand. The liaison seemed baffled. It's as if they're tourists. Jack laughed. The idea of aliens coming to Earth as tourists to experience the thrill of a dangerous planet. It was both absurd and perfectly logical. As the alien visitors emerged from their transport, their environmental suits more streamlined than the bulky protection early visitors had required, Jack stepped forward to greet them. Welcome to Earth, he said with a warm smile. It's not so bad once you get used to it. The lead alien's translator conveyed their reply. We are honored to visit the world that creates beings capable of surviving what most cannot. There is much we hope to learn from your people. Jack nodded and began the tour. As he led them outside, into the sunshine, he noticed how they flinched slightly at the brightness, the open sky, the unfiltered air, all things humans took for granted. Perhaps being from a death world wasn't such a bad thing after all. It had made humans adaptable, resilient, and capable of thriving in conditions others found impossible. Those same traits had ultimately earned them not just fear, but respect and admiration across the galaxy. Earth's reclassification had indeed thrown the Galactic Council into chaos. But from that chaos had emerged a new understanding, both of humanity's potential and of what different species could accomplish when they worked together instead of fearing each other's differences.